Good evening, everyone. Hope I'm audible. Am I audible? Okay. Once again, I welcome you all to the second day of the international webinar series on recent advances in supramolecular and biomolecular research, organized by the Department of Chemistry, SSN College of Engineering. Today, we have with us Dr. Suresh Motika, the second speaker. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to him. Dr. Motika received his PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research, Bangalore in 2016. Later, during 2016 to 18, he got selected for the prestigious Alexander von Humboldt Research Fellowship and worked as a postdoctoral fellow in Bergische Universität, Germany, under the supervision of Professor Ulrich Scherf. His field of specialization includes supramolecular self-assembly, 3D coordination polymers, conjugated microporous polymers, soft fluids, and gel. He authored several papers in high-impact journals such as SES Applied Nanomaterials, Nature Communications, and so on. In 2019, Dr. Suresh was selected for PBC Research Fellowship at Weizmann Institute of Sciences, Israel. Currently, he is a Newton International Fellow at University of York, UK. This prestigious fellowship is awarded by the Royal Society of Chemistry to the eminent scientists for their extraordinary contribution in their field of interest. He has vast experience in the field of supramolecular chemistry. In today's talk, he will be discussing about the self-assembled supramolecular materials and its application towards light emission. With this short introduction, I'd like to invite Dr. Motika to deliver his lecture. A very good afternoon, sir. So I'll stop, share my screen so that you can start share. Yeah.
Is my screen
No,
visible?
it is not visible, sir.
Now?
Now it is visible. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm also audible, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Tanusri, for a great introduction. Good evening, all of you. I think it's evening already in India. It's still afternoon for me. Thank you very much for inviting me here for presenting our work on supramolecular materials at this SSN College of Engineering. I'm really happy to deliver a talk here. I especially thank Priya, who approached me for giving me the talk. She's a very good friend of mine, and she's a strong competitor in our master's days. We did masters together. So let's go into the topic. So today I'm going to talk about how functional materials can be made using supramolecular interactions, especially light-emitting metal organic materials. So here I showed a glass substrate coated with a white light emitting metal organic material, which is glowing intensely like an LED under UV light. I'll show you how this material is made in the next slides, but before that, let me walk you through the concept of supramolecular chemistry. So supramolecular chemistry is a domain of chemistry that involves molecular systems composed of discrete number of molecules rather than a single molecule, and the forces that are responsible for their spatial organization are weaker interactions. So supramolecular chemistry deals with weak non-covalent interactions. These are the three scientists who pioneered supramolecular chemistry. And they received Nobel Prize in 1987 for their works on crown ethers, cryptands, and carcerands, which acts like a host systems and displays highly selective guest encapsulation of the ions or molecules. So the term supramolecular chemistry is coined by Professor Jean-Marie Lehn, who says supramolecular chemistry is chemistry beyond the molecule. That is chemistry of molecular assemblies using non-covalent interactions. So what are these non-covalent interactions and how they are classified and how they are different from covalent interactions? So non-covalent interactions, as I said, they are weak interactions. That means their binding affinities or binding energies are extremely low compared to strong covalent bonds. And that means these non-covalent interactions can be disturbed by using external stimuli such as heat or acid or base. Whereas covalent bonds are extremely strong, they do not collapse on applying external stimuli. So one of the first and foremost supramolecular interaction is hydrogen bonding. For example, here the ice crystals. In ice crystals, water molecules are arranged tetrahedrally and they are connected through supramolecular hydrogen bonding. So this bonding can be disturbed just by applying heat. So when we apply heat on an ice crystal, it will slowly melt down to water. So these interactions are highly directional. This is why we see well-defined shape and structure of the slowly grown ice crystals. Hydrophobic interactions are also supramolecular, which are responsible for separation of oil from water. Also, the pi stacking interactions between the aromatic units are also supramolecular. These are well studied in organic electronic applications. And metal coordination interactions are also supramolecular in inorganic complexes. There are other type of supramolecular interactions like van der Waals forces, electrostatic interactions, or anion-cation pi interactions. So in nature, DNA provides one of the best example for supramolecularly formed system. So DNA is formed from two types of supramolecular interactions. One is hydrogen bonding, and other is pi stacking between the adenine, thymine, and guanine cytosine units. So DNA is stabilized by two supramolecular interactions ultimately. With these supramolecular interactions, non-covalent interactions, there are other covalent interactions like covalent bonding, which is along the phosphate backbone. So these examples that exist in nature inspire scientists to create molecular materials that are based on supramolecular interactions. Our type of approach on metal organic materials is quite simple, and we follow the strategy that can be understood by simply understanding the Lego block assembly. So we start with the building blocks, and we arrange them in an orderly fashion or assemble them in an orderly fashion to create a desired structure for a desired function. Okay, so the building blocks in our case are simple metal ions and organic linkers. So these are the two important constituents of making a metal organic material. Now, when we assemble them in solution, they can form one-dimensional coordination chains where the primary interactions are coordination interactions. Now, these coordination chains can further interact through supramolecular interactions to form two-dimensional coordination polymer. Or this can also form a network-like structure, which is three-dimensional and porous in nature, which is called three-dimensional coordination polymer or coordination polymer or metal are also called hybrid inorganic organic material. So my work is basically creating this morph structures in the scale, not at the crystalline scale. Morphs are porous materials that possess defined cavities. This is the cavity and a definite surface area. So the cavity size or pore size and the accessible surface area we can determine using nitrogen gas absorption. So depending on the type of the absorption profile you get through nitrogen gas absorption isotherms, they are classified into microporous, mesoporous, or macroporous. Since MOFs are highly porous, they are used for storing gases. They can be also used for separation of gases. They are used in catalysis, especially only the heterogeneous catalysis, not homogeneous. They are used for chemical sensing applications. So these MOFs we can obtain in the form of crystals, powders. We can also make thin films of MOFs. We can create gels or MOF nanostructures. Our work is mainly focused on MOF gels and nanostructures since they are more easy to process on substrates towards light emission. So how do we achieve the light emission in these materials? Since MOF is assembly of metal and organic linkers, now if we choose an organic linker that is emissive, the whole MOF can be emissive due to the linker-based emission when it is excited with the light, or if we incorporate an actor molecule or a guest molecule within the pores of the MOF, the energy from the linker can be transferred to the acceptor or the guest molecule through a resonance energy transfer process. So we ultimately see a different emission, which is an acceptor emission. With respect to the extent of energy transfer, we can also see a mix of donor and acceptor emission. So the type of emission that we ultimately see depends on how much that we dope the MOF with the acceptor and how energy transfer is happening. So I'll show you with a few examples how this is done and how we achieve the light emission. The first example is based on this organic linker, which is called OPE. So this is OPE is a rigid rod-like molecule with an extended pi conjugation. So it is highly emissive. This OPE linker is rationally designed and functionalized with the terminal carboxylic acid groups, so it can bind to the metal ion. And it is functionalized with the alkyl chains on both sides, which will control the nanomorphology that we obtain. So we take these two moieties, 2 units, zinc acetate and OP linker, and we mix them in THF for 6 hours at room temperature. We see a formation of stable colloids where the zinc binds to the linker in an 1:1 fashion through zinc carboxylate. These are proved from elemental analysis and IR analysis, sort of bonding. So these colloids we characterized through scanning electron microscopy. So when we see under microscopy, we see agglomerate particles in a spherical shape. Now, when these particles are magnified under TEM, we see a large number of dark lines separated by a distance of 0.8 to 1.1 nanometer. And in powder X-ray, we see only 3 peaks, which is suggesting an ordered pattern. So from the TEM and powder XRD, we try to come up with a structure for the nanomorph. So initially, the metal ion coordinates with the organic linker to form a 1D coordination chain, where the distance between the two metal centers is around 2.1 during the first diffraction in the XRD. Now, these coordination chains has a high aromatic core, so they can interact through supramolecular pi-pi stacking interactions. Now, these 1D chains start stacking to form two-dimensional coordination. Now, these coordination chains interact with the hydrophobic alkyl hydrophobics and create a three-dimensional supramolecular structure. So this sort of stacking is evident from second diffraction peak, where the diffraction peak's d-spacing is around 1.2 nanometer, which is matching well with the distance to the coordination states. So if we see the distance of the two dark lines is matching well with this distance. So from this analysis, you can say that the lines in TEM corresponds to the pi cores of the 2D coordination states. So in this way, we propose this is the best possible structure from the analysis of TEM and X-ray diffraction. Now, if we carefully see, the 1D coordination chains possess polar head groups and a non-polar side chains. So this whole 1D coordination chain can act as an amphiphilic system. It is literature that parts can transform into different morphologies when we choose reaction parameters. We like to see such a transformation by changing the reaction time. As we've seen before, at 6 hours, we see nanoflake-like structures. Now, increase the reaction time to 24 hours, in a conversion of nanoflakes to vesicular nanostructures. These vesicular nanostructures are also evident from TEM analysis, and the thickness of the wall, 4 to 5 layers of 2D coordination sheets. Now, on increasing the reaction time to 32 hours, we see nanoball formation, and then finally to toroid nanostructures at 36 hours. So, due to the dynamic nature of the coordination chains along the hydrophobic moieties, it is possible to create such a large number of MOF nanostructures within a single system. And the integrity of the MOF maintained all over the structures, as evident from powder X-ray diffraction analysis. So now we wanted to see its light emission properties. So we have a supramolecular porous structure, which is strongly fluorescent because of the linker emission. And the emission maxima is around 450 to 460 nanometer. Now, we wanted to study its energy transfer and color emission tunability. So we doped it with a dye, which is a red emitting dye. Now, when we shine this MOF with light, the energy can be transferred over the MOF and finally transferred to the acceptor. And ultimately, we see the emission from the acceptor, not from the MOF. So for this transfer to happen, there should be a good spectral overlap between the donor emission and the absorption of the donor. When there is no overlap, there will be no energy transfer, so we would not see the emission from the acceptor. So the dye we have chosen and the MOF has an excellent spectral overlap. Here you see the emission from the donor, which is in blue curve, is completely overlapping with the absorption of the acceptor. So we could definitely see a clear energy transfer from MOF donor to the acceptor dye here. So we indeed see such phenomena happening in the dye-loaded MOF. The red spectrum is for the emission spectrum of the dye-loaded MOF, which is excited at MOF's excitation. So when it is excited at MOF's excitation, we are supposed to see MOF emission. Instead, we see no emission at the MOF region, but we see a strong emission at 625 nanometer at the dye molecule. So this is an indication that the energy used for exciting MOF has been transferred to the dye. As we also see, the color of the emission has changed from cyan to completely reddish. This is also evident from direct excitation. When there is an energy transfer, direct excitation of the dye should have a lesser intensity, which we have already seen here. So the energy transfer in the MOF structures is also evident from lifetime analysis. When there is an energy transfer, the lifetime of the donor, which is nanomorph, should reduce in the donor acceptor system. As you see, the lifetime of the nanomorph is 5.9 nanoseconds, which is reduced to 2.3 nanoseconds. So this is an indication of energy transfer happening in the system. We have also studied the energy transfer in vesicular nanostructures, as evident from similar fluorescence and confocal images. We have extended this OPE-based system to optical imaging applications. So we have used the same OPE linker, but changed the metal ion from zinc to gadolinium ion. In this case, we see formation of a rod-like nanostructure, but in this case also we see a continuous line-like structure with a spacing of 0.9 to 1.1 nanometer. So we would expect a similar packing in case of gadolinium nanomorph as well. And since they are inherently fluorescent because of the linker, we have used them for cell imaging applications. We have extended this system also to self-cleaning application. Here you see we have used the same metal ion, which is zinc, like previous system, but the length of the alkyl chain we have increased to C18 number compared to the previous system, which is only C8. So the idea is to create a self-cleaning or superhydrophobic system. So it makes sense to create to increase the length of the alkyl chain. So ultimately, we increase the hydrophobicity of the system. So this nanomorph, when it is coated on a glass plate, we see similar spherical nanoparticles. And at a higher magnification, this agglomerated spherical particles show spike-like structures, which is a good roughness, and it is an indication of possibility of good superhydrophobicity behavior. When we looked each sphere in 3D AFM, each sphere has hill and valley-like structure. So this high roughness with this hierarchical hills and valleys is an ideal surface for superhydrophobicity. So this surface here is fully occupied with alkyl chains. So we tested this, assuming that it could be a good superhydrophobic material. We tested this for superhydrophobicity. As you see, this is a substrate which is coated with this particular morph, and the surface is having projected alkyl chains. So the surface surface is highly hydrophobic. Now, when we move a drop of water, the water tries to go away from the surface, and it is not tampering the surface because the surface is extremely hydrophobic. We have also studied the possibility of self-cleaning. So now I showed a glass plate, which is coated with a pale greenish morph, and we put some dirt over. Now, when we drop water on this, the water just rolls on the surface and taking the dirt away, but not tampering the surface of the nanomorph. So this is a good indication that morph is extremely repellent to water, and it is quite stable over the longer time. So in this way, we use this particular OPE-based system for creating light-emitting nanostructures and also self-cleaning materials. And since it is in the nanoscale, it is easy to process them onto glass plates or substrates just by spray coating. The next system I'm going to talk about is metal organic cage-based system for white light emission that I showed you in the beginning slides. So for creating the white light emission, we use gel-like system to have a better processability. So here we used anionic metal organic cages as starting materials, which is prepared from gallium nitrate and imidazole dicarboxylic acid. So I call this imidazole dicarboxylic acid linker as IMDC for easy in the later on. So here, each IMDC chelates 2 gallium centers through nitrogen and 1 oxygen of the carboxylate and leaving other oxygen free, and it is negatively charged. So the whole metal organic cage is extremely negatively charged because of the leftover oxygen negative ions. So in this cube, there are 12 IMDC units occupying the edges and connecting 8 gallium centers and forming a symmetrical cube-like structure or a cage-like structure, which is termed as metal organic cage or MOC in the next slides. So this in the crystal structure, we see a large number of cubes which are assembled in a 3-dimensional framework-like structure. So here, each cubes are connected through dimethyl ammonium cation through hydrogen bonding interactions. So the dimethyl ammonium cation is providing facility to extend this metal organic cages into 3-dimensional way to form a framework-like structure. And the pores of this framework are filled by water or DMF molecules. Since this metal organic cage is extremely negatively charged, it is quite soluble in water. And the stability of MOC in water is also evident from high resolution mass analysis, where we see 3 different peaks for metal organic cages solvated by water with 3 different charges. So now we have a solution of MOC. We wanted to test its assembly in different hydrogen bonding donor systems. Now we started with aqueous ammonia, which is a strongly hydrogen bonding molecular binder. When we add aqueous ammonia to MOC solution, Within 6 hours, the MOX gets assembled and form a hydrogel, which is quite stable over a long period of time. And the SMOC gel, when it is dried, we see formation of tubular nanostructures, as we see from scanning electron microscopy. So the possible assembly is MOCs are bridged by ammonia instead of dimethyl ammonium cation in the previous structure. So now the ammonia connects the metal organic cages through charge-assisted hydrogen bonding and extend the assembly in a three-dimensional way, where the large amount of water get trapped and results in the formation of hydrogen. So we want to generalize this concept that metal organic cages can be self-assembled to form hydrogel in presence of hydrogen bonding molecular binders. So for this, we choose different molecular binders, which is amino ethyl propanediamine, beta-alanine, and guanine hydrochloride. In all these cases, when we add the molecular binders to a MOX solution, we see immediate gel formation, as you see here. And scanning electron microscopy image shows that in each gels, they have different nanostructures. We have also tested their binding affinities, and we found that amino ethyl propanediamine has the highest binding affinity compared to all other molecular binders, and guanidine hydrochloride has the lowest binding affinity. So this gave us a thought that what if we add mix of molecular binders to MOX solution. So indeed, we have seen when we add a mix of molecular binders, we see the morphology that is dominated mainly by the binder, which is having a stronger binding affinity. So now, for example, if we take amino ethyl propanediamine and guanine hydrochloride, if we mix them together to a solution of MOC, we ultimately see the formation of bouquet-like nanostructures over the nanosheets, because the binding affinity of amino ethyl propanediamine is extremely higher than guanine hydrochloride. So we want to create a white light emitting gel. For this, you need fluorescent binders. Since the MOCs are able to form hydrogels with any type of hydrogen donating hydrogen bonding molecular binders, we designed this particular molecular binder. This is particularly designed to create fluorescent gels. The core here, the tetraphenyl is highly fluorescent because of its aggregation-induced emission features, and it is functionalized with terminal ammonium cationic groups. So this helps in binding the metal organic cages in this way through hydrogen bonding. So before going to the gelation, we tested them whether they can interact or not through fluorescence titration. Now we see the black line here, which is a pure MOX solution, which is non-fluorescent. Now we started adding equivalents of this particular cationic binder. As we add TP cation molecules to the MOX solution, MOX started aggregating, which is evident from the fluorescence spectrum. As we see, with increasing the addition of TPE to the MOX solution, the intensity of the emission related to the TPE is continuously increased, and it gets saturated at 6.4 equivalents. So from the titration analysis and energy minimization studies, we found out that there is a possibility of two tetraphenylethene cationic molecules can fit in between two metal organic cages via the charge-assisted hydrogen bonding interactions between metal organic cage and the cationic TPE. So with this data, we further proceeded to create fluorescent hydrogens. Now, when we mix this cationic TPE with the aqueous metal organic cage, just by sonication, within 3 to 4 minutes, we see a stable gel formation. And as you see under UV light, this is strongly fluorescent with a cyan emission. The TEM analysis suggested cube-like structures in the gels, and we proposed an assembly like this where metal organic cages are assembled by the TPE linkers and extending the assembly in three-dimensional way where the pores are filled with water and dimethyl ammonium cations and resulting in the stable gel formation. So now we have a stable metal organic cage gel with TPE within it. So it is highly fluorescent. It is a good idea to see the actual color of the emission on a chromaticity diagram. So the CIE coordinates indicates the actual color of the emission from CIE diagram. So here you see, which is circled in blue, is the CIE of this particular gel. So we can clearly make out the emission is slightly bluish and cyanish. So now the corresponding emission spectrum of this particular gel is the black curve here, which is purely the emission from the tetraphenyl ethene. Now we used again energy transfer phenomena to obtain light emitting gels. So so now we started to dope this particular gel with different rhodomine acceptors. So as you see, when we are increasing the concentration of rhodomine 6C in the gel from 0.02 to 0.08%, we see a decrease in the emission from the TPE and an alternative increase in the emission from the acceptor, which is at 560 nanometers. So at 0.08%, we see a complete transformation of this cyan emitting gel to a pink light emitting gel, which is lying somewhere here in the region, which is also clearly saying that the emission from the gel is pink. And the CIE coordinates are 0.31 and 0.27. So this pink gel, when it is spreaded on a substrate, it looks white, but it is not really pure white. So to get a pure white light, we have irradiated this pink gel with 365 nanometer laser source for 5 minutes. So the idea is the pink gel has this tetraphenyl ethene molecules. So when we irradiate this system with 365 nanometer laser source, some of the TPE converts into diphenylphenanthrene, which is strongly blue emitting. So when it is converted into diphenylphenanthrene, the blue emitting part is adding to the pink emission. So we are ultimately seeing a further broadening of the emission spectrum, and it is covering the whole visible spectrum, and thus we create a white light emission. So indeed, we see such interesting results. When we irradiate this pink gel with light source, we see within 5 minutes a stable white light emitting gel, and the CIE coordinates matches well with the pure white light ideal CIE coordinates. Since this is in the form of gel, they are easy to process, just like a gel with a paintbrush. So here you can see this glass is coated with this particular white light emitting gel, just using a simple paintbrush. And we can also do writing on the lamps, as you see here written as AIE hybrid. That implies aggregation induced emission based hybrid system for white light emission. We can also coat them on lamps, or we can also coat them on flexible plastics. As you see, in all these cases, the emission is completely retained and it is extremely strong. So it implies that the emission of the gel is not depleted coating on the substrates or any type of substrates. One important thing is to notice is the films coated with the gel are extremely transparent. As you see, we can read through the letters with as clarity as without any film. So in this way, it is possible to create a large number of metal organic nanostructures or metal organic framework nanostructures for different light emissions and including the white light emission. So to summarize, supramolecular interactions provide a large number of opportunities to design and develop novel materials for advanced technologies. The field of supramolecular chemistry is still growing, and there are a lot of opportunities to come up in the near future. The metal organic systems are particularly interesting because of their highly directional coordination bonding, and high robustness of their system can be highly potential for future light emitting displays. With that, I'd like to conclude my talk by thanking my previous supervisor and other collaborators from India and Germany and UK, and also my colleagues from India and Germany. And finally, I thank all the funding agencies, Department of Science and Technology, India, CSIR, Royal Society of Chemistry from UK, Alexander von Humboldt Foundation from Germany. And finally, I thank you all for kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Motika, for your very nice and important talk. We have some questions now.
Yeah.
The first question comes your friend. For light emission, metal part or the organic part, which contributes more?
In our case, in the materials I showed, it's mostly the linker part of the metals we choose like or so it's from the metal, but it is also possible to create the materials where the metal can emit. For example, if you take terbium or europium, they can definitely show antenna effect, and they can show emission from terbium or europium also. But in our case, it's purely organic linker based.
Okay, then the next question comes, that is whether these MOFs can be used as sensitizer in solar cell.
Yes, they can be used. So there are a few examples. MOFs are made from porphyrin systems. The organic linker is a porphyrin linker. So in different papers, there are different type of arrangements of the porphyrins. So indeed, yes, these MOFs made from porphyrins can be used in solar cells. Yes, that's possible.
Okay. Are only white light emitting? Bhushan Patel is asking.
Yeah. Can you repeat it again?
Yeah, 1 minute. Are only the white light is only light emitting? We go to the.
I don't understand.
Okay, we question.
Okay.
Yeah. So can we use this light emitting material for drug delivery? That is a very common question. I think
it's quite possible. I think I showed one of the application where we used MOFs for cell imaging applications, right?
Okay. Did you add some elements to fluoresce, or it was present in the polymer itself?
Okay, let me answer the first question. Sorry. So in this system, we can, so here you see the MOFs are within the cells. So if we load these MOFs with the drug molecules, the drugs can be released at the appropriate sites depending on the pH. So it is possible to deliver drugs based on this MOF nanostructures. And what is the next question, please?
Yeah, 1 minute. There are even you can check, I think, if it is coming to you, but yeah, I'll tell you.
All right, okay, it's in the chat box.
So many came. Yeah, did you add some elements to fluoresce or it was present in the polymer itself?
No, That's what it's, the emission is coming from the linker that we choose. So when the linker is assembled, the whole polymer will be fluorescing.
Okay. There are many more questions.
There is a
Yeah.
question recently I
Yeah.
saw whether nanoflakes
Yeah,
are
if you
kinetically
can
trapped
take, yeah.
structure, whether the structure after 36 hours is stable or can it be still be dynamic. Sangeeta Roy. Yeah, these nanoflakes are not kinetically trapped. They are thermodynamically stable. And yeah, after 36 hours, when we still continue the reaction, we will get back to the nanoflakes actually. So the whole structure collapses and we again see nanoflake-like structures. We didn't characterize them very well because maybe we were in rush to complete the work. And the contact angles around 162 to 165 degrees in case of this particular MOF. Yeah. Next question.
I think Priya had another question.
Okay.
Or you can take also, no problem.
Okay. Metal organic molecules are reactive towards light. I don't say they are reactive, but they are excited, and when they relax back, they emit light like a simple fluorescence phenomenon. Next question: all organic compound can use LED. No, we haven't studied the application of LEDs directly. We only show a proof of concept for creating materials for LED. Okay. Where is the question from Priya? I can't see it actually.
Is there any difference between coordination polymers and MOFs in case of light emission, and if so, why?
Okay. These two terms are interchangeably used: metal organic frameworks and coordination polymers. They specifically use a term metal organic framework when it is a three-dimensional framework like structure with 4 channels that are accessible three-dimensionally. In case of coordination polymers, it doesn't have to be the case. So that's a difference between MOF and a coordination polymer. But yeah, in different cases they use differently, but both are interchangeably used and both are correct.
Okay, what are the parameters we are supposed to take care while we synthesize MOF, and especially how we decide?
So it depends on what type of MOF you're creating. If you're particularly interested in nanostructures, we need to design the ligand in such a way that it will have additional supramolecular interactions and it creates soft structures. But if you're interested to grow crystals, you should take rigid ligands. Normally, the MOF crystals can be grown by heating a metal solution with a rigid organic linker at a high temperature in DMF and water, like 140 degrees. So when the solution is cooling down, crystals grow in a block shape or needles-like crystals.
Somebody asked, is there any specific reason there for choosing gallium metal?
Not really. Gallium is actually able to form such kind of cage-like structures. So we just choose gallium in that sense, not specifically that gallium has some function in the white light emission or anything else.
Okay, I think you answered one question that whether it can be used for drug delivery. The same person has asked, since MOFs are hydrophobic, how can we inculcate with drug?
No, we don't use hydrophobic MOFs for drug delivery actually. The system that they are not hydrophobic. This particular system, which is having a chain length of C phobic, but this particular case, they are not really hydrophobic because the chain length is quite small. We tested that. So this inclusion of drug we can also do in organic solvents. So we can take methanol, for example, or water methanol mixture, and we can mix water methanol mixture of drug with the MOF, so we can still incorporate the drug into the MOF system. And these MOFs are highly dispersible in water. I don't say in water, but they are highly dispersible in buffer solutions or physiological pH solution.
Next question comes from Dr. Sangeeta. She asked, very nicely you showed by the competitive reaction that mock gels form the preferential structure with the best binder. Will the same thing happen if you add them in a sequential manner?
Yeah, that's possible, as long as there is a free mock available in the solution. So initially, if you add a binder with strong binding affinity, so it's already self-assembled, the whole mock present in the solution. Now, when you add the next binder, if there is still a mock available in the solution, it can still bind, but we can still see morphology from it. But the prominent morphology will be the binder with a higher binding affinity.
Okay. If there is no more question, I think
there is a question from Sridhar
yeah.
M.
Yeah. You take that.
I would like to know the work function of these supermolecules.
That's
We haven't done such studies because we did not put them in devices, so we were not interested in that. We were interested in creating the fundamental principles for creating these nanostructures than studying them at device applications. But yeah, it is quite possible to calculate the work functions, but sorry, we haven't done that.
I think that's all. We have no more questions. Thank you once again for your very informative, very nice and very lucid talk. Thank you all for joining, all the participants. From the chat box, we can see that they really like the talk. Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you very much.
For the participants, I'm just telling you will get your feedback link tomorrow after the third talk. Please do join us for the third talk tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you so much for joining.